Hey guys, and welcome to another episode where today I'll be taking you through a live demo of Adobe Premiere Pro video editing software. Please do subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you know when more content is released. I hope you find this video useful, and as always, any questions you might have, pop them below in the comments and I'll be sure to come back to you. From scratch, we're going to look at the functions of the software, so how to import footage, cut and trim and reposition content, add titles and images, as well as using audio, setting levels of that audio, and considering effects and transitions, including slow motion. This is a basic introduction to the program with some useful tips and tricks, hopefully, in how to use it day to day. I've included the images and videos I've used in the demo below in the description so you can download these yourself and follow along. Please remember again, of course, you can download a 30-day free trial of any Adobe program from their website, www.adobe.com. I've included the audio and video files used in the demo below in the description so you can download these and follow along. Starting Premiere Pro brings up this, very similar to Adobe Photoshop, and we're going to select New Project, top left. Make sure we save this in a folder, which is going to be where everything else goes, all of our content, all of our video, audio, etc. Going to need a lot of space for this. Video is a lot larger than Photoshop, so make sure it's on a OneDrive or a USB where you've got space to save. Always title it as well, just in this case calling it test. Press OK, and then Adobe Premiere Pro launches itself and gives you a interface. Now at the top there's different ways you can lay this out, so clicking assembly here, editing, oh that's disappeared, if that does happen they're here, so Windows workspaces, effects etc, that's come back, audio etc, graphics. There's different ways you can lay the program out. The default is effects. Okay, so you have your timeline here, you can click it to bring the blue border around it, where you import things to the left, and on the far right you're going to have your effects and everything else. Okay, you can double click here, you can go File, Import, or you can use Control and I to import footage, and that of course will be your videos, your images if needs be, your audio, your voiceover, etc. if you've recorded things separately as MP3 or WAV. Double clicking, I'm using stock footage, which again is available to you. Importing those, puts them here. Now again, you can click and drag these, so if you want to make this slightly larger as just an area to look at, you can. You can display this in a different way as well. Oh, the second one didn't import, let's do that again. There we go. So you can have it as a thumbnail view, which some people like, or a list view. The beauty with, the benefit, with thumbnail view is that putting your mouse over it and just moving it left and right, I'm not clicking anything, just hovering my mouse over it, scrubs through this like a preview, which can be really useful. When we come back to look at all of our footage, we might be thinking, what was it again? We can just simply run our mouse over it. It gives us a very quick preview. Just going to tighten that up again because it's a bit big. Clicking and dragging that into here, let go, will then put that onto the timeline and show me where my video monitor is, and then give me the options for the currently selected piece of video. Just like in Photoshop, if we click a layer, we can do things to it. In the same way, when we click a piece of video, it then provides us the options to change it. Things like its scale, things like its position, and things like its opacity, how see-through it is, etc, etc. And just like Photoshop, you've got blend modes, so you could essentially blend video together with others. Bit advanced, but for a later date. First things first, at the bottom we have this zoom tool. So click and drag allows you to zoom out and in. And of course video, if it's very long, it will kind of scroll over and then you'd need to kind of follow it over left and right. So zooming out can be good because you can see where it is. With our scrubber bar, clicking and dragging, so I'm holding my mouse down and dragging there, I can kind of scrub through. So I've got a piece of stock footage here of two people enjoying an autumn day, hitting spacebar on the timeline, wherever, plays, space again, stops. I can use my left, you can hear me clicking, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, goes frame by frame. Useful if you want to get a really precise edit. Okay, so spacebar play, and then stop, and then left and right to frame by frame. This area here is the tools, just like we have in Photoshop. And a lot of these you won't use, but one you will use is called the razor tool, or the old one referred to as the splice tool. Sometimes easy to use keyboard buttons, so C on the keyboard changes my mouse as I zoom in to eraser. Pressing V gets me back to the select tool, so C, V, C, V, etc. C is that blade. And I can then literally, like a piece of sellotape, cut this wherever I want to. So I can splice it up, I can cut it up into smaller segments. So let's say we wanted to finish that piece of video there, just before she moves her hand up the scarf, up to his head. So just there. With my splicer tool, my razor tool, cut tool selected, click on where the blue is, because that's where I want to make the cut, and there I now have 1 and 2 pieces of footage. So I've split the footage now into A and B. Okay, it still plays, but it allows me now to move this piece separately. So I could now, when it runs out, we'll just show black. And then again, when it comes back, it plays from that moment. Okay, so cutting a piece of footage up, wherever and however you want to do it, you can. And then again, V, maybe you want to get rid of bits, etc., etc. And then you could reorganize this into different moments. So when playing this now back, and you'll feel it snap when you move things, you'll feel it kind of just snap to the ends. If you don't feel the snap, make sure you've got this guy turned on, the magnet tool, or again is S, you'll see it turn off and on, S, to make sure that things snap. So now when I play that back, you'll notice it will jump around all over the place, because I've simply taken the piece of footage, cut it up, and just reorganized it. You can, of course, Control Z, Z, Z to undo anything, or delete everything. And a good way to get things back, if you will, return stolen footage, is to put your mouse at the end, and you'll see your mouse change to this. Okay, just by putting it at the end. Click and hold, and you can drag back what was originally deleted. So there's my original piece of footage again. It's a better way, some people would argue, is to then make the cut. So instead of using the C, making a cut, V, select that bit, delete. Why don't we simply put our scrubber bar where we want to make the cut, or we want to trim the fat, click and hold, and then just reduce down to that. Okay, so there's two different ways you could do that. What we can do as well is right click, about halfway down, speed duration. This could be useful for slow motion. 100% normal speed, 50% twice as slow, 200% twice as fast. If I put this to 400, my clip will end up only being a second long. Very, very fast. Okay, so if I return to the start and press play, far too quick. Again, undo that, Control Z, go back to speed. Let's make this 20%. You'll notice my piece of footage now is going to increase to a total of 25 seconds. So you watch it grow here on the timeline. Comes all the way over to here. It's the same piece of footage, just now slowed down. You'll see it have that almost frame by frame. A little bit jagged, disjointed, not very smooth. So again, got to be careful with slow motion. Too slow and it looks like this. Very unnatural. Okay. If I was to drag my other piece of footage onto the timeline, so now I've got that, or I've got that, putting that just at the end so it continues to flow. So obviously when this finishes, it will then play this one. Hitting spacebar play, you'll see it just cut between A and B. So just a straight cut. What you can do as well, again, just being creative in how we cut footage, instead of making the cut or reducing it, whatever's on top, again, we've got layers here. So we've got 1, 2, 3 so far. We can add 13, 27, however many we want. Whatever's on top is shown. So for example, when our scrubber bar gets to this point, this piece of footage will now begin. So just a demo. This piece of footage plays, and then this one will override because it's on top. So it's a good way of covering up mistakes. So what you could do, take a little bit out of that, a couple of cuts, select that bit, delete. You'll notice it will jump back from that, then to that, and then back. And again, because this piece of footage is on top, so it has priority. Another good way to possibly think about editing in terms of deleting things, not showing certain elements. Just going to stretch that back out. So I've got my 2 pieces of footage. I'm going to take a bit off that because it is a bit long. So that's footage, that's cutting, that's moving, that's slow motion. A lot of people will be asking, how do I do titles? One thing we could do is insert a picture. Insert a picture as a transparent layer, so on Photoshop, as a Photoshop file or a PNG with just, for example, a masthead on. And that again could be layered on top. I'm just going to, just for example, grab super quick, just a picture of anything. This will do as a picture. And again, drag it on. You'll notice that Photoshop shows it as pink, not purple. Purple is default. I think it's referred to as violet. Violet's referred to as default for video, pink for picture. So again, when I put my scrubber bar over, now it's just static. So hit play, and again, it's just playing that static image. I can drag that out, so I want it to last longer. Again, I can cut it, etc. I can treat it just like I did video. Okay, still that piece of sellotape, if you will, of that content. So again, video, picture, and then come back to these people walking. So pictures can be inserted, and again, with it selected, sometimes you have to click off, click back on it. You'll find, again, you might want to scale this down. So just clicking and dragging right. Again, my picture's quite big. Got to make sure it fits. Again, I might want to, move it around, size it up. In terms of composition, could be useful. So pictures again can go on, images can go on as a layer. One thing we might want to do as well, as mentioned, is insert title. So, as we mentioned, just using images there, we can create a new, what's called legacy title. And again, you could call this, and I just encourage this if you're doing lots of titles. For title 1, just going to call this hello, just so I know what it is for later. Just to remind you, this is probably disappearing soon as a tool. Not to worry, I'm sure they'll fix something in a later version. Press OK. It brings up this whole new window. Okay, and you can stretch this out, make this as big as you want. We're still in Photoshop, it's just a separate window. Okay. On the, again, click and drag, you can drag all these areas. On the left hand side, we've got our tools. We automatically select type. We've also got a move tool or a selection tool separate. We've got on the right hand side some options, and down the bottom we've got some templates. They look a little word arty, year 7, steer clear. Okay, so with type tool selected, click and drag, and we're going to choose the area you want to type in. So just for example, hello, title goes here. Again, just like we can do in Photoshop, we can select this up the top, click and drag right. We can size this up, or of course we could type in whatever. Just again, clicking and dragging, often easier because we can see it. Just want to centralize that. You can also, as you know, change your tracking. So click and drag, tighten it up, push it apart, etc. Find your style, as you know, find what looks good for you and what's consistent with what you're doing. You can choose your font here, and again, if it was available to you in Word or Photoshop, it's also available in here. Okay, so I'm just going to choose Tahoma just as an example. I can bolden it up, just want to size that down so it's all on one line. Again, you might want to think about different things here: color, shadow, strokes. So again, lines outside like borders. Do you fill it solidly? Do you give it a gradient? All of that jazz you can change and mess about with here. Clicking the selection tool and then clicking just anywhere else. All right. But when you click back on it, you can of course treat it like an object. And these 4 markers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, almost like a north, south, east, west, allows me to kind of almost find the center point. Okay, if you need to move things up, move things about. All right. Then as soon as you close this window, all your changes have applied to that title, which is there. Again, still in our folder area for this project. Again, click and drag, move it onto the timeline. Again, Photoshop treats this as pink. Just so you're aware, if you right click any of these, so I could right click this, what you can do is under label, we can change the label. So I can change this to blue. So I want all of my video, for example, just under label to be blue. Or you've got a certain part recorded. So, you know, you've shot a certain thing outside, you've shot a certain amount of footage with a certain character. Maybe you blue all of that, or you orange all of that, whatever. So that on the timeline, it's much more easier to find. Because when you import everything, dump it all on, you might be going through thinking, oh, what was that again? So as you're scrubbing through, you'll know what to go to in a quicker manner. Because we've put a title on nothing, it appears, again, just playing upon black. And just like before, we can trim this down, we can cut this up, we can do whatever we want to. We can move it about. So obviously if it's on nothing, it's on black, just by default. When you move it above another layer, remembering that whatever's on top has the priority, because the rest of it is see-through, hence why we saw black there, you're now going to see your title upon the footage underneath, upon that video. So it's a good example where we're playing now. Our title comes up. And again, we could delete bits, have it arrive and disappear, and then come back later, etc., etc. So again, titles can be placed over footage, or as much footage as you want, as long as it was at the top. Okay, you keep pushing up, we'll end up again on layer kind of 27, but as long as it's the top one, it will appear in front of everything else. One thing to consider here is that, as we spoke about earlier, when you click anything, you then get this area again. Now, although you can double click this again and come back into this, and again move it around. So if I pop it kind of top left and close, you'll now see that it's going to arrive here. Just undo that. Just say when you come to this point, you think it just doesn't look central. You could also just come and kind of trim this up, just to kind of smarten it up any kind of last change, or it's a little bit too big. You could go back and change the font size, but again, it's text. It's not gonna get affected too much in terms of quality. So you could kind of boost it up 130, reduce it down 50, etc. So you can still play with finals here, don't forget. All right, if that's useful. Next thing is to think about music. So we've done a lot here on image. We've got images, text, video. Again, just going to double click. And just for example, I've got a piece of audio. We place audio on the bottom track. So we've got our main line here, and we've got A for audio, V for video. So we can't drag an audio track and put it here. We can drag and leave it on our audio tracks. And again, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. We can mute certain tracks if we don't want to hear it currently. So even if I press play, you won't hear it. So I'll just, hopefully you can hear that. But again, you scrub back and forward. Just removed headphones if that does help. So now when I scrub, okay, just again to annoy everybody and just to quickly preview it. But again, hit play, and again now we've got not only video playing but our audio playing right from the start, because I've dragged it right to the start. Quite a mellow sound, kind of a very moody mode of address, if you will. Nice little vibe going on there. On any layer, you can see I'm putting my mouse just here. Click and drag down, as an example, and I can kind of zoom in. And again, if I zoomed in, I can see the track. I can see all the kind of the volume of it. So I've got these peaks and troughs, which can be really useful sometimes when we're making cuts. Now, obviously, this piece of audio is consistent. There's no kind of like dead zones, piece of quiet, so it doesn't drop to nothing. But that could be really helpful when you've recorded a voiceover or anything. If you leave silences, leave gaps, that it makes it easy then to come along and know where to cut. And then, of course, you can get rid of bits, etc. Close the gaps for later. All right, again, just as we did with video and image, we can cut audio, trim audio, all right, if useful. But don't forget, of course, that unless we use audio transitions, the end will be very abrupt. Okay, so that's audio. If I was to grab a second piece of audio, and I'm going to grab just a couple of sound effects. So I'm going to grab, just for example, a cell phone ringing and the beach. Let's just say we're using these for whatever reason. I'm going to bring that one down onto 3, and then put these two, they are quite long, here. I think I've got another one just on the end. So I'm going to reduce that one right to there. Yeah, that one's so short, if you can see it here. Let's reduce that right down. There he is. He's so short. I'm going to put him there. So I'm going to leave a gap so you'd hear. I'm going to delete that for now. I just want to demonstrate this with 2. So, for example, you might put a beach on number 1, music on number 2. If they're at the same time, quite difficult to hear one of the other. You can imagine that one of these might be the voiceover. And something we want to be able to control here is the sound mix, the levels. If you can't find it anywhere on the window in the layout, make sure, of course, we go back to Window, and then we go to Audio Track Mixer. Excuse me. Brings up this. Okay, just like a mixing desk, really, with a couple of faders for each of the channels. So A1, our first one, A2, our second one, and then an overall mix. We've got nothing on 3, so there's nothing to really touch here. So again, hitting play, I can see that number 2 is a lot louder. The bars go a lot higher than number 1. I peak at -7, so there's 7 decibels more audio to go in before it was to clip, hitting unity gain, hitting 0. And I would encourage you to turn all of these to off. What this is doing, if you left them to read, is Premiere Pro will read what you do over time, and then almost like an automation process, it will then play that back. So it's just easy to leave things off and then set your settings, and so it's a permanent set. I'm going to reduce the music. Typically, rule of thumb is between 16, 18, 20 dB, which again will give us a nice mix. And now, the beach is much more prominent. The audio, the music is there, but a lot less. So that's a good way in which we can control music. All right, we can control the audio mix. And again, we want to make sure if we had a voiceover, that was the loudest. You might want to push, give a little boost. Watch you don't go over 3 or 4, because you'll get into the red and you'll find this clip, referred to as clipping, which will basically mean distortion, and it will sound really bad. And it obviously, in terms of professionalism, something we want to avoid. Okay, but again, dialogue is going to be, in some people's minds, the most important thing to come across well in the audio mix. Okay, again, just to demonstrate, if I wanted to mute the beats just for now and just again hit play, hear the music, there it is, I can unmute it. So again, just to quickly turn things off and on, almost like the eye, like we have here, like we've seen in Photoshop, so we can just preview off and on things just to see, again, if we've got lots of layers, what's the difference by having that on or off, etc. Okay, so that's music. One thing we'd want to think about here is transitions. Yes, we can cut, but how do we get nice fades? How do we fade things in and out? Don't want it to be too abrupt. I'm just going to zoom in and start with the beach. So I'm going to go up here to the right. I want audio transitions. There's only one, a fade. The default is usually with a blue. Click and drag and drop onto the very start. And you can see I've got this almost this envelope which will fade the track, our beach, from 0 to full. Now if I can double click that little bit, and I can control the duration here, so maybe I want a 6-second fade in. So if I again scroll back, or again with my mouse, you see if I can put it at the end here, I've got that trim, but you can see the little flag on it. That's just referring to that effect, the fade. So I could click and drag and notice the duration just underneath on the numbers, so I could know that this is going to be there, 3 seconds. So again, you can control it. Yes, you can click in and change the number, but again, sometimes nice just to manually do that. And again, that could be something we do with video. Video transitions, dissolve, cross dissolve. Let's fade in this couple. Okay, a nice fade. And it will be from black because there's nothing, of course, underneath it. So drag on. It applies itself. I want this to be, let's call this auto, 3 seconds. Okay, so now, hitting play, the audio is going to fade in, the video is going to fade in. Okay. What can be nice as well sometimes, just moving that out, I'm just going to mute the audio just for now, is that this shot could fade between this shot. So instead of cutting, so 1, 2, we can actually slowly fade it in. Now what you can do, because they're joined, they're kind of snapped to each other, you can apply a cross dissolve in the middle. Oh, you can't on this one, that's an interesting one. Usually you can, it will just kind of go between them. Just want to make sure that is touching. There we go. Try that again. No, it's just going to be awkward. Okay. Another good way of doing it, if that doesn't work, is to just put it on top, as we said earlier. And obviously, just want it a few seconds. So obviously that will take over. Oh no, I've turned the preview off, that's why. Just make sure your eye's on, just like Photoshop. So now, as we know, that will come in, have priority. Let's apply a dissolve there, just the start of that one, and let's make that, again, a good 3-ish seconds long. So now you'll see it fade in here. Now because this video, do you notice that this video, I needed more of it, to where the dissolve will have finished, so there, it cut out if you noticed. So now I'm going to get that lovely gradual 3-second, almost wedding kind of feel, cross dissolve between 1 and 2. Nice and subtle. Again, as we know, connotations of dissolves, transitions, shows things over a longer period of time. Could be useful. Most people like to stick with a straight cut, Be really careful, please, with the other transitions in here, all these wipes, slides, etc. It's very PowerPoint word art. We do want to steer away from things which look a little comical, a little cheap, barn doors, etc. Stick with a dissolve or stick with a cut, unless there's need to use a particular transition. Okay, 9 times out of 10, you know, most Hollywood editors, TV editors, they'll use a dissolve or a cut. Okay, they'll never use anything else. On the flip side, if you wanted to obviously fade to black, you could just, in this example here, apply the dissolve to the end. Just going to make that again slightly longer. And you'll notice here, because we've got nothing underneath, just going to mute him, that we will fade to black. Great way to finish. Okay, don't just cut to black without a dissolve like this. Alright, apply that dissolve, even if it's just a second or two. Just that last 10%, finishing your product well, starting your product well. Okay, and again, we could do that with titles. So if you want the title to, again, just dragging that fade on, 2-second fade, please. Okay, so all of a sudden there's a lot going on. Okay, and you can imagine with all these animations, there's a lot to process, there's a lot to think about. So make sure you save, Control S. Yeah, sometimes Premiere Pro will sometimes get a little stuttery because there's an awful lot you're asking it to do, lots and lots of layers. So hopefully that's useful. Text, transitions, cutting, layering, music, and yeah, making sure that again your product is as you want it. Don't forget that obviously on the scrubber bar, set where you want it to end. So if you're looking to do a 30-second product, that's how long it should be. Okay, your timeline is with no limit. Okay, your timeline can be for hours if needs be. Alright, so hopefully that's useful, and happy Premiere Proing. Well, hopefully you feel more confident in how now to use Premiere Pro. Do share this video with others and let me know your thoughts below, or questions you might have, or even other ways you're using Premiere Pro so we can share ideas together. Guys, thanks ever so much for watching, and until next time, stay safe, take care.